When we hear about AI generating books, we immediately picture endless streams of generic filler. But traditional publishing has been forcing writers to produce a different kind of compromise for decades. This is a chart showing how a traditional travel book is engineered. The economics require a book about Sardinia to serve hikers, families, foodies, and archaeology nerds all at once. The author has to write toward the center of that curve. They write for a median reader who has an average of incompatible interests, and no actual human sits at that average. Look at this ancient Sardinian monument. There is a small opening carved at the base of this massive stone slab. It looks like an entrance, but it leads nowhere. Solid rock blocks the way. It is a false door. To actually get inside the tomb, ancient visitors had to walk around the side. Mass market publishing is the blocked door facing the public. It forces generalities.
But a custom AI pipeline allows us to build a path around the side, bypassing those economic constraints entirely. When you remove the need for a massive print run to cover costs, the size of your audience no longer dictates the shape of your writing. You can research, structure, and source a rigorous manuscript based entirely on what makes the text valuable. Sometimes the optimal audience size for that text is exactly one person. Sardinia is covered in thousands of ancient towers, giant stone tombs, and Phoenician coastal cities. A typical published guidebook ranks all of these sites by a blend of fame and general appeal because it must please a massive, diverse population. We discarded that consensus ranking. Instead, this custom book filtered the entire island against one technical interest, the engineering of mortarless masonry. Sites were chosen based on the millimetric precision of the dry stone joints and the geometry of corbelled vaults, rather than their popularity. We deliberately included one sacred well of lower craft at the bottom of the itinerary to serve as a calibration floor. You cannot accurately perceive the high quality of the top-tier sites without a baseline of what ordinary construction looked like. Once the specific travel route was set, it generated a strict scoping rule. The physical itinerary decided exactly which places anchored a chapter, and nothing else. Even this massive UNESCO site at Barumini was excluded. Fame didn't earn a chapter. Being on the actual driving route did. The itinerary provided the anchors and then got out of the way. The book itself contains no logistical planning. There are no driving times, no ticket office hours, and no parking tips. It focuses entirely on 4,000 years of population genetics, ancient trade networks, and archaeological evolution. By stripping away the disposable travel logistics, the route stops acting like a temporary planning document. Instead, the stops on the map serve as physical anchors for a permanent historical narrative. A general book has to spend pages explaining basic architectural concepts to the reader. This custom book already knows its reader has visited 28 ancient stone sites across 15 different countries. We can build a comparative report against that specific travel history. If the reader has already walked through the rock-cut architecture of Petra or a Mycenaean burial chamber, the book doesn't need to over-explain a Sardinian tomb. One carefully calibrated sentence of comparison replaces pages of generic exposition. We can also weave the reader's personal historical interest through the text. Because this reader grew up in Russia, the book highlights Sardinia's role as a landfall for political fugitives, detailing the meeting between Garibaldi and the Russian anarchist Mikhail Bakunin. It belongs here because the island's actual history supports it. The reader's Jewish heritage anchors an entire chapter built around one word, Chanabara. It is the Sardinian word for Friday, derived from the Jewish phrase for the pure meal prepared before the Sabbath. The community that brought it there was erased, but the word remains in daily use by people who no longer know why they say it. Tailoring a book to one person's highly specific interests has a dangerous failure mode, flattery. It is tempting for the system to inflate weak claims or endorse fringe archaeological theories simply to hold the reader's attention. To prevent that, we built a strict editorial audit into the pipeline. The evidence standard was set higher than a commercial book. Every claim had to be backed by mainstream, peer-reviewed archaeology. Hallucinated sites, forced timelines, and rejected dating methods were cut immediately. A custom book earns its value by targeting your specific perspective, rather than agreeing with it. The reader consumed the book before the trip as intended, but found the text significantly more valuable after returning home. The text hadn't changed, the reader had. This chart shows the life cycle of a standard travel guidebook. Its entire value is concentrated at the moment of use. Once the trip is over, its utility drops instantly to zero. It is a tool built to be consulted and then discarded. Because we restricted the scope to only the monuments the reader physically stood in front of, the custom book behaves differently. Every measurement and historical detail in the text now attaches to a lived, physical memory. The trip supplies the raw images, while the text provides the historical scaffolding that organizes those memories into a coherent narrative. Publishing economics created a world where content had to serve everyone, and therefore truly fit no one. That constraint is gone. We can now design a deeply researched object for one person. A rigorously engineered book for one person represents the superior version of the medium, a text that accounts for where the reader is going, what they have already seen, and exactly why they are there.